In this video, we're going to talk about how to brake on a motorbike for beginners. So the first thing to know is braking with your engine brake. So the first thing you want to do is lower the gear and allow the engine to start slowing the bike. This means there's less pressure on the front and the rear disc brake. If you apply too much pressure on the brakes, what happens is you often lose traction or you skid to the side. What we want to do to have control of the motorbike is to stay completely straight. This is especially important if we're going down hills or if we're entering a turn. We don't want to lose control before that turn. When we're braking, the next thing to remember is to use the front and the rear brake together. What happens is often people will just use one brake, and that also causes skidding. So if we're gentle on both the front and the rear, we can keep traction and we can hold straight. If we apply too much pressure to one brake, we're going to slide out and lose control. Now, I know it feels fun to go sideways into a turn or to loosen up the front end, and it also looks fast, but the reality is you don't have any control like that. And actually, if we are trying to do a track or a trail fast, often by making those mistakes, it's actually a lot slower. So smooth is fast. When we're braking, we also need to remember our braking zones. So often what happens is people try and ride as fast as they can and they brake as late as they can. What that means is you brake too aggressively, and again, you're going to lose control. So you want to brake with enough time to make into the turn. Often if we're on a motocross track or if we're on a trail that is fairly well used, what happens is there'll be natural braking bumps into turns. What we want to do is we don't want to brake on those bumps because that's going to upset the suspension and upset the comfort on our motorbike. So what we want to do is we either want to brake before those braking bumps and coast over those bumps, or we want to brake after those bumps. But what we want to do if we're going to brake later is we want to slow down the speed of the motorcycle and use our engine brake. Another thing to remember when braking is if we're braking on slippery soil, if we're on hard, icy ground, we're going to break traction, especially if we're hard on the brake. So what we want to do is we want to find the soil that has more traction. So the way we read the soil is we typically look for the darker mud. When the ground is hard pack, it goes hard and shiny. And often if there's just a little bit of moisture on there, it's like an ice ring. So we don't want to brake aggressively on that kind of soil. So we should always be on the lookout for the darker and softer soil to do our braking on, because it's going to have more traction and we're not going to lose control on that kind of soil. The final thing to remember when we're braking is our body position. So often people will brake sitting down. If we're going over bumps or anything like that, the suspension is going to beat us up and we're going to lose even more control. So we want to be in that standing position, but moreover, we're not going to be in our neutral attack position, because what happens is when we brake aggressively, we fall over the front of the motorbike. So what we do when we brake is we get lower down on the motorcycle, so we have a lower center of gravity, and then it's harder for the force to pull us forwards over the front of the bike. So I'll show you what I mean now. So this is our neutral position when we're in the attack position, and when we brake, we're going to get lower like this, in which case it's a lot harder for us to fall over the front. What we can do to help us with our body position when we're braking is we can adjust our brake lever and foot pedal. So often what happens is people have the front brake too high up, and that encourages your elbows lower and also encourages the seated position. So what you want to do is adjust the front brake lever so it's a little bit lower, and that initiates the elbows up. And the foot pedal, a lot of people have the brake too low, and that also encourages the seating position. So what we want to do is we want to adjust our rear brake pedal a little bit higher, and that allows us to brake with good riding form. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, then watch another one of our videos on screen now. And if you want to explore off the beaten track in Vietnam, then book a lesson or a tour with Dirtbike Academy. Thank you.